What do you need to keep in mind to get the best quality gear at the best price for your home studio? Well, that's what we're going to discuss in this week's Studio Live Today podcast. If it's your first time here, my name is Pete Johns, and this is Studio Live Today. My goal around here is to help you create, record, and release your best music. If you want to find out all the tips and tricks and tutorials, head on over to studiolivetoday.com. You can subscribe to the podcast and you can check out all of the videos. In this one, though, we're talking about gear. And before I talk about gear, every time I talk about gear, I say this right up front, and that is, you do not need to buy all the gear. You've probably got enough right now to create music. If you've got a smartphone, if you've got an iPad, if you've got a Mac, if you've got a PC, you can connect up some gear and you can start recording. Or you know what? Start recording using the voice recorder on your phone or using GarageBand if you're an iPhone or an iPad user. There are lots of ways to record without much gear. But the thing with home studio gear is there's a thing called GAS, right? Gear Acquisition Syndrome. What is GAS about? Well, it's about the syndrome or the addiction that a lot of us get to buying more gear. We think that the only thing we need to get better at creating and recording and releasing our best music is that new piece of kit. Here's the thing, it's not the facts. So yes, gear is important, and getting good quality gear for your home studio is something that you may be striving towards, but it doesn't have to cost you a fortune, and there are things to consider, things to do, things to not do to get the best deals. And that's what we're going to cover right here, right now in this show. Where do you buy your gear? Let's start with the basics, shall we? There's a few places, and here's what I would recommend is that you jump on over to the Studio Live Today Gear Guide. It's at studiolivetoday.com/gear, and this is where I put all of my recommendations, all the stuff that I use here in the home and mobile studio. It's all here. Now, there are affiliate links over at that website, studiolivetoday.com/gear, which means that if you make a purchase, you pay the same price. But what happens is they break off a little chunk and they send it my way. So yes, it will pay me a commission if you buy using that guide. Now, there's a few places I recommend you buy, and right up front there, it's Amazon, it's Sweetwater, it's eBay, and it's Thomann. Now, different people in different parts of the world will probably use those in different ratios. Here in Australia and the US, we use a lot of Amazon. Sweetwater's US only, so that's for folks in the US. eBay's all around the world, regardless of where you are, and Thomann's very big in Europe. So a lot of European folks buy a lot of their gear from Thomann. There's Guitar Center, there's a bunch of other places, but they're the online retailers that I recommend. And here on my gear guide, when you go over and take a look, I've got my whole mobile setup, all the gear I use for my mobile recording. I've got my desktop setup, all the gear I use in the home studio. And then I've got everything, absolutely everything that I use, audio interfaces, microphones, cables, you name it, it's there. But is this just an infomercial or a home shopping network segment for Pete Johns? No, it's not. I'm going to give you some tips and advice here because it can be a bit of a minefield, can't it? Working out what to buy, but then where to buy it as well and how to buy it, those can all be tough things. So let's assume that you're in the market for something. Is it an audio interface? Is it a mixer? Is it a new guitar? Is it anything at all for your home studio, your mobile studio, or really anything? There's a few tips that smart folks do. I don't claim these. I've learnt these over time from listening to other people and getting advice. But the number one thing is to buy from someone reputable. Now, I know some people do and don't like Amazon, do and don't like Sweetwater, do and don't like eBay. You'll have your own preferences, but the reason that those four retailers are the ones that I recommend buying from, if you're wherever you are in the world, is that they have really good return policies. And returns are something that you need to keep in mind. They're probably the most important thing because if you're buying gear online, you probably haven't tried it out. Or if you have, you've tried it out in a different place, or you've tried maybe a different model, or you've gone to a brick and mortar store, which we'll talk about a bit more later, and you've tried it out, and then you go to buy it online, and maybe you get the wrong model, or maybe it's not quite as good as it was in the store, or maybe yours is dead on arrival. All of that needs to make sure that you have a good return policy. Now, the reason that I buy on Amazon and eBay and use PayPal is it gives me double protection. Like, you don't have to do this. It's not prerequisite, But the reason that I do it is it gives me that double layer of protection. It means that I've got the backing of a large reputable company. I know they're going to sell me actual quality gear, and I know that if something goes wrong with it, that they have a really good return policy. So the number one thing to save you those headaches, to save you that hassle in the future, that I would say is check the returns policy. So if you go to cheapguitars.com and you buy that Taylor acoustic because it's $50 less and you pay $450 instead of $500 for it, just make sure that cheapguitarsdirect.com or whatever I called it actually has been around a while. Check the reviews of it. So don't just go to its website. Go to Google and say cheapguitars.com reviews or cheapguitars.com reputable, and you'll soon find, you'll go down the slippery slope and find out if they are indeed or perhaps aren't. And I really hope there's not an actual site called cheapguitars.com. I probably should have checked that before I used that as my pretend guitar shop. But the point I'm making here is I've had too many folks come to me after the fact and go, I bought this thing, it was cheap, it was too good to be true. And guess what? Like everything in life, if something is too good to be true, probably not true. You probably need to stop and think about it before you go ahead. So return policy is number one. Number two is the price. Like, you know what? Here in 2023, we are shopping on price. I admit I'm shopping on price. I want to get the best price for what I'm buying. Yes, number one, the reason I said returns policy is I want to buy from a reputable retailer. I want a good returns policy, but then I'm looking for the best price. Because who's got extra money to spend when you could be investing that in your music, in your business, in your family, going out for ice cream? I don't care what you want to do, but you don't want to spend any more than you absolutely have to. And there's a couple of things you can do around this. So a lot of websites, a lot of places you go actually have a price match. And I'm going to give you a live example of this because I'm buying some gear right now. In fact, I just bought some gear. And look, I'm not buying from any of those retailers I just mentioned. Why? Because I'm here in Australia and we've actually got a couple of retailers. And I know for my Australian friends, you probably buy from these places as well. But the reason I didn't mention it is that most people that listen to this podcast are not in Australia. But DJ City and Store DJ are the two places that I go to, probably more than any, to actually buy my gear. And there's a cool thing that you can do here. So what I'm doing for those listening on the audio version is I'm typing in the words Rode Procaster because I've just ordered the Rode Procaster dynamic microphone. Here in Australia, the retail price there is $289. I can see that there's 16 reviews there, and I can jump in here and add this to my cart and buy it. But what they actually have at DJ City, and a lot of other retailers are starting to do this sort of thing, is a price match guarantee. So they will match the price of any other place that you can find it. Now, you have to factor in things like delivery costs, and that has to be a retail store. You can't use a wholesaler and say, look, I could buy it for $100 off the back of the truck. It has to be reasonable, but you can actually get them to price match. Now, the way it used to work is that you used to have to price match. In fact, if you're watching live here or if you're watching the video version, you've just seen what's happened here. You used to have to price match by finding the best price, by going and searching it all out, and then jumping onto the retailer's website, and then usually going down an email form or having to call them or do something. What they're doing more and more to streamline and automate, because everything's AI and everything's robots, is that they're doing these automatic price beat guarantees. So what has it done here? Well, it said that the lowest price that they've been able to find was $231 for this microphone. So they're offering me it for $221. A $289 microphone for $221. All I have to do is hit the apply discount, and it's going to add it to my cart at that discounted amount. So it's a pretty cool thing to do. If you're in the market for something and you want to go in, and it won't show it here straight away for those watching the video version, but when you go to checkout, it'll apply that discount and you can do it straight away. There's other ways to find the cheapest deal that we'll talk about in a moment as well that you can use, but just trying this sort of thing. And again, we'll talk brick and mortar in a moment, but you can do this with your brick and mortar stores as well. You can get them to price match. In fact, here in Australia, there is a place called Officeworks, and anytime I'm buying any electronic gear, any computers, any gear for my home studio, I'll go to Officeworks because it's right around the corner from me. And if I find a price anywhere else, they will actually beat it by 5%. And all I have to do is just show it to them. They then go to the website, they check it, and if it's legit, then they'll beat that by 5%. So price match guarantees work really well and can keep a little bit of extra coin in your pocket. I mentioned other things you can use. Honey is another thing, honey.com. That's another, it's a plugin that you install in your browser. And then when you're looking to buy things, you can actually go in there. And if you're on a website and you know how it's always got that promo or discount code field, and you're like, I don't have any promos or discount codes. Well, if you go to Honey, you can actually get those. And there's folks that have recommended. I haven't used it personally, but it's something that other folks have recommended. Mr. Beast is behind it, or maybe even owns it now. I can't be sure, but he has something to do with it. It definitely advertises it very heavily if you know who Mr. Beast is. If you don't, it's fine. If you don't, you're probably over the age of 40 and don't have children under the age of 15, because Mr. Beast is very popular with the kids. And I've probably just very much offended many of you who maybe you watch Mr. Beast. That's fine. You do you. So returns policies, make sure that you can actually return your gear. Make sure that you're getting the best price using a price matching service or directly there on the website. The other thing, and I mentioned it a little bit before, is you can still go to a brick and mortar store. So here for me, there's a few. Derringers is who I use here in Adelaide, and they're very good. If I just need to buy some guitar picks, or I need a set of elixirs for my guitars and guitar strings, and I need them now, then there's nothing better than going into a brick and mortar store. And yes, quite often their prices will be a little bit bigger, and you can say, well, if you're shopping local, you're supporting your local community. But what you'll often find is if you ask the question, it doesn't hurt to ask, and a lot of them will actually price match. Some of them will simply just say, look, online prices are that way because they don't have to pay for an actual store. So we can't match online prices, but they may come down a little bit. So for instance, when I bought my guitar, I bought my Taylor acoustic guitar. Back in the day, I bought it from Allen's Music here in Australia. They don't exist anymore, but I went into Allen's and saw this Taylor guitar. It was $1,149. And I just happened to know that I could get it for $949 online. And I said to the dude, look, I don't want to be a dick about this, but I really want to buy it from you, and I want to buy it today. I want to get into that guitar today, but it's $949 online. He said, look, what I'll do, you know it's here, you played it, you know exactly the one you're getting. I'll do $979 for you. And I'm like, that's fair and reasonable. I love it. And I got to zip it up in the case, pay the money, pay the man his money, and walk out the door with my new guitar, knowing that it was the exact one I paid. I didn't have to deal with delivery. I didn't have to deal with returns. I knew exactly where to go back to if there was anything that went wrong. There are definitely benefits from shopping at a brick and mortar store. The other thing that I want you to consider for brick and mortar, it can be a great place to shop for heavier items. So for instance, if you're getting guitar stands, or if you're getting sort of infrastructure gear, desks or mixers or things for your studio that you want to actually try, you want to actually touch, and they're going to be pretty heavy, so they're going to be costly to get delivered, they can be good things to actually go, especially your mic stands. You want a mic stand with a nice big heavy base. The ones you buy online, because they want to save money on delivery, are usually the ones that don't have a nice heavy base. So buying things like that is good. The other thing is speakers and headphones. I do recommend going and taking a listen, because things that you need to actually hear, there's a different, like microphone's a bit different because not many folks are going to go in and record a bunch of stuff with a microphone and do all of that sort of research. You probably roll the dice a bit more with a microphone. But say you're spending $300 on a pair of monitor headphones, or $700 on a pair of monitor speakers, you may want to go in and actually listen to them and spend some time. Bring in some of your favorite music, or bring in some music that you're working on, or bring your iPad and plug that into the speakers if you're going to be using it with a mobile rig, or your laptop, because you want to actually hear what it's going to sound like when you get it home and when you start using it. So there are still reasons. And look, yes, can you go into a brick and mortar, get the poor salesperson to do all the work for you, spend 2 hours in there testing it out, then go home and buy it for the cheapest price on Amazon? Of course you can. And brick and mortar stores, again, if they want to do the right thing by you, again, maybe just ask the question. Maybe just say, look, I see you've got these speakers for $8.99. They're $7.99 on Amazon. Can you come down at all? Can you give me a little hometown discount so that I can support my local store? And more often than not, they'll do something for you, or they'll throw in a set of cables, or they'll do something that's going to help you out. So asking the question never hurts. Now, there's a thing in buying things, and it's called buyer beware or caveat emptor, which means the buyer has to be aware of what the seller may do or what the goods may be. Are you getting what you think you're getting? And I've got a little story around this one, which is to do with guitar strings. So, as much as I say that Amazon is very reputable and great with returns, and if something goes wrong, you can always return things, they're not the greatest at vetting each and every single vendor, because the way Amazon.com works is it's not just all from Amazon. There is some stuff that comes from the Amazon warehouse and it's shipped directly to you. And that stuff is almost 100% guaranteed in quality. But if you get something from a third-party seller but through Amazon.com and it's for a particularly low price, there is a chance, sometimes a good chance, that it is counterfeit, meaning it is not actually the gear that you think you're getting. Now, I had this experience with some guitar strings. As I mentioned earlier, I use elixirs, which are very nice guitar strings on my acoustic guitar. Here's what happened though. I went on to Amazon.com and I found some elixirs, like 3 packs of elixirs for about, I can't remember, $30, $35. Now, elixirs are normally here in Australia $20, $25 a set. So 3 for like 35 is an amazing price. And I should have alarm bell should have been going off in my head before I even clicked that button. But again, I was in a hurry. I'm like, oh, cheapest. There you go. They're the cheapest. I'll just get some sent out here. I got them out and something wasn't quite right. You know that thing? It's like those old, you ever rented a video that wasn't quite right? Who remembers that? The old days, the VHS days. Yeah, if you've ever picked out some guitar strings that are not quite right, there was something about these things. From the minute I looked at the packet, I'm like, oh no. There was just some slight dodginess in the printing. There was, when I opened it up and got the pack, the paper that the strings were in just felt a little thinner. And it wasn't, and when I pulled the strings out, I'm like, they feel okay, but they don't feel the same. And luckily, when I got these, I still had one set of elixirs that I bought at a guitar shop. So I knew were 100% certified. So I got those out and I got these out and I'm like, oh no. Yeah, these 3 sets of elixir guitar strings were 100% counterfeit. Now, the seller may not have known it. They may have just been got it from a wholesaler like this. It's not worth going down the chain of blame here. But the good thing was I bought them from Amazon.com. So what did I do? I went straight back. I said, return, not fit for purpose. These are 100% not elixir genuine strings. And they were like, oh, they're pretty sure they are. But no, again, if you know or even if you believe, for those that have sold through Amazon or on eBay, I've sold stuff on eBay before. As the seller, unfortunately, you don't have a lot of rights because eBay want to protect their buyers because that's where they get their constant revenue through. As much as they like their sellers, they like their buyers even more. So if there's ever a dispute, it's usually going to go your way as the buyer. The seller kind of gets shafted. And I've definitely had that problem before where I've sent something that I know is 100% working fine. The person's got it. It hasn't done exactly what they thought it would do because they haven't done their research. And then they come back at me and say, oh, I'm not going to pay. I'm going to return it. And yeah, you can't say buyer beware because they have the upper hand. But you as the buyer have the upper hand. So utilize your upper hand and use it as you feel fit. So let's just recap because I don't want to go into any more detail than that because everything else comes down to your own choosing. But there is one final thing that I wanted to talk about here, and that is beware the reviews. Dun, 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 dun. Why should you beware the reviews? Well, there's a couple of problems. The reviews that you see online, especially on places like Amazon and even on eBay and even on other places, they are not always 100% accurate. So basically the cheaper and the better and the lower end of the gear is, the more likely that you're going to come across fake reviews. So if you've ever seen an item on eBay or on Instagram or advertised on Facebook that you're like, wow, this looks really amazing, but it's so super cheap. It's like this cool thing, but it's $20. And then it's got like Trustpilot 4.9 star reviews. And you're like, wow, everyone loves this thing. And then you buy it and you get it and it's a giant disappointment. And you're like, what were those other people thinking? Why is everyone rating it 5 stars? Well, a lot of those people were rating it 5 stars because they were either being paid by the vendor to rate it 5 stars. Sometimes you buy something and there's a card that comes in there that says, if you rate this 5 stars and send it to us, then we'll send you a $5 off coupon for your next purchase. Those things happen. And sometimes it's just flat out fraudulent. So sometimes they just pay farms of people or bots to actually put in reviews that are not legitimate. So if you're looking at reviews, there's a couple of things you can do. Look for verified purchase. So that means that that person has actually purchased that product on that site. So Amazon and eBay have verified purchase that will pop up next to someone who leaves a review if they've actually bought it. Beware the review of someone that hasn't actually bought that product. Simple. And do your research, like jump around, look at different sites. Don't just trust one site's reviews. And you know what? The same goes for YouTube people. The same goes for people who are actually doing product reviews, because some people have been paid to do that review. Whenever I get products here, I've either bought them myself, or if they've been sent to me for free, I disclose that. Why? Because I want to, but number two, because I have to. Now, I have to because it's a legal requirement in most countries around the world. Does everyone do that every time? I don't know. I am not going to comment on that. But again, buyer beware that if someone is promoting a product and it sounds like they think it's amazing and it seems too good to be true, there's a very high likelihood that they are either getting paid for that, they're getting some sort of affiliate or commission for it, or they just are part of the company. They're legitimately invested in the company. And now you might be saying, Johns, you're a giant hypocrite because you get affiliate payments from Amazon, from Thomann, from eBay, if people buy from them. Yes, you're right. And Sweetwater. You're right, I do. And that's why I say, don't just take my word for it. If I say the Audio-Technica AT2020 is one of the best budget condenser microphones going around, then you can just believe it and go buy it and then use my links, and then I'll get a small commission paid. Or go check out someone else's channel, or go to 3 or 4 different retailers and check out the reviews from real people that have made verified purchases, and then make your decision. And look, I'm not going to just say, look, just trust me, because I've just said don't trust anyone. So I'm not going to say just trust me. So don't just trust me, but do your research. Do look around and do find out what other people are saying about things. And the one thing that I will say is that every piece of gear that I have on my gear guide is stuff that I know actually works. Like that, you could say, isn't the incentive for you to get as many people to buy as much stuff as you want? But no, because my reputation is actually worth a little bit more than that to me. Sometimes, maybe some people don't value their reputation as much, and they might say, yeah, buy this more expensive model, but knowing that the person doesn't need it. I've kind of built this whole business, this whole Studio Live Today thing around helping folks create, record, and release their best music without having to spend a fortune on gear. And I don't want to spend a fortune on my gear. So the reason I still use a Steinberg UR22 audio interface, and I use Audio-Technica AT2020 mics. I'm recording this podcast using my AKG D5. These are all bits of kit that are definitely low-end sort of consumer versions. I could be telling you to spend a whole lot more. Go out and buy a Shure SM7B and a Cloud Lifter and buy Apollo Twin interfaces, because they're going to be $700 instead of $200, and my cut of that's going to be bigger. But I don't want to, and I'm not going to. And if other people do, that's totally up to them. It really does come down to what you want to do at the end of the day. And there's some people that literally just have entire channels built around affiliate marketing and just selling as many products as possible. But for me, quality matters, and the quality is way more important than the quantity. And the fact that you will go buy something and then come back to me and say, Johns, you recommended that microphone, and you're right, it's great, I got a great deal on it. You're more likely to keep watching the videos. You're more likely to trust me next time you go to buy something. And once again, go to the gear guide and use the affiliate links next time. So I'd rather go down that track personally than try and manipulate or try and tell you to do something you shouldn't. So let's review, because there's a few things we've covered in this podcast. We talked about where you should buy. Now, you don't have to buy at the places that I recommend, but make sure it's reputable. Make sure it has a good reputation, been around for a while, selling stuff at reasonable prices. Remember, if it's too good to be true, it's probably not true. So make sure that you decide where you buy. Check the returns policy. Audio gear is like a jacket. Sometimes you try it on and it seems all good, and then you get home and then you go out to wear it and you're like, this jacket sucks. Doesn't fit right. Doesn't sound good. Okay, maybe your jacket's not going to sound good, but you get my gist. You want the ability to be able to return it. And look, don't do the thing where you just buy a whole bunch of stuff knowing that 90% of it's going to be returned, because that's actually really bad. It's bad for business. It's bad for the environment. All that stuff doesn't go back on shelves. It goes to these third-party auction sites, and they buy it for like pennies on the dollar, and then they resell it. So it's not the right thing to do. If you're going to buy something and you legitimately want to try two different things, maybe that's okay. But don't go and buy 10 things knowing that you're only going to keep one of them. That's not the greatest way to go for anyone. Check out the price matching. Make sure that you consider what the price is and look around, do your research, do your Googling, go to ShopBot or one of the other places, or use the price match guarantees that are either automated or that you can manually do. And beware of the counterfeit goods, because remember, if it's too good to be true, it possibly is. And don't forget, your local brick and mortar store, hey, you probably get to hang out with some cool people, and maybe you make some friends, or maybe you make some connections, or have some cool conversations, or get told about some cool band, or maybe you meet someone that you can collaborate with. So don't discount actually going into a music store, because your local Guitar Center or your local Derringers or your local whatever, Manny's, whatever your local store is, it could be a cool place to go. And sometimes you just want to go and fondle the merchandise, don't you? Yeah. You know you do. You know you want to just go and play with guitars one time. You've probably got no intention of buying. But if you go there and you have a good experience and then you are looking to buy something, you might go back. And again, good retailers are the same as good online creators and retailers. They want you to be happy, and they want you to be a happy return customer. Speaking of which, if you would like to be a happy return customer of Studio Live Today, you can go to studiolivetoday.com to get all the links to all the things and all the places that you can go to check out the videos, the audio podcast, the email newsletter, and of course, that gear guide. I'd be remiss if I didn't give it one more mention, studiolivetoday.com/gear. And if you're listening or watching this one around about the time it's released, it is Amazon Prime Day just around the corner. So I'll be doing a live stream all about Amazon Prime Day and checking out, is there any cool home studio gear for the home recording enthusiasts? So check your local guides, check studiolivetoday.com or the YouTube channel for all of that. If you enjoyed yourself here today and you're watching the video version, a thumbs up down below would be very much appreciated. Feel free to leave your comments. Are there tips that I missed? Where do you buy your gear? Where's your favorite place? What tips do you have for folks to get the best deals and the best gear to kit out their home studios? And if you're listening on the audio version, I would love you to leave a review wherever you're listening to this podcast. As we say at the end of each and every show here on Studio Live Today, I would like you to be kind to yourself, be kind to others, and keep creating. And we'll see you next time.